National Road, Bataan Peninsula, Philippines, April 11th, 1942. Private First Class. Ben Steele's legs stop obeying orders. Around him, 75,000 men shuffle forward under equatorial heat. The column moves like a dying river. The smell hits you first if you survive to remember. Human waste mixed with infected wounds. Death that hasn't finished its work yet. I am the War Maestro, and tonight I bring you a tale from April 1942, when surrender meant nothing, when mercy died on a dusty road, when the living became the dead long before their hearts stopped beating. Because sometimes the greatest horror isn't what waits in the darkness. Sometimes it's what happens in broad daylight, when the rules of war collapse, when humanity evaporates under the sun. 3 days earlier, Major General Edward King surrendered 76,000 troops on the Bataan Peninsula, the largest American surrender in history. King knew his men were finished. 4 months of fighting on half rations, malaria in their blood, dysentery in their guts, dengue fever burning through the camps. By April 9th, they were eating mules and bark. King expected prisoner treatment, Geneva Convention protocols, water and medical care. The Japanese expected 25,000 prisoners. They got 76,000. The math didn't work. The anger in their eyes said everything. Ben Steele stood among thousands of skeletal soldiers, a Montana kid who joined to escape the Depression. In his pocket, a letter to his mother he'd written 3 months ago, never mailed. The paper was soft from being folded and unfolded. Japanese guards screamed orders in a language he couldn't understand. The guards looked confused, angry, lost. One officer screamed at another. Ben caught a single word repeated like a curse. Haji. Shame. Check, check, check. Bayonets locking into place. The sound ran down the line like dominoes falling. The Japanese soldiers weren't seeing prisoners anymore. In their code, Bushido, surrender, was the ultimate disgrace. To surrender meant ceasing to be human. These weren't men in front of them. They were already dead. Already ghosts. A Japanese colonel moved down the line. He was looking at rings, watches, personal items. Corporal James McCarthy from Philadelphia couldn't get his wedding band off. His fingers were swollen from beriberi, puffed up like sausages. The colonel drew his sword. The blade comes down. Ben hears the bone crack, sees the hand separate, watches it hit the dirt. The fingers are still twitching, the wet thud of blade meeting flesh. McCarthy's scream cuts through the humid air, then stops. The body was dragged to the roadside like garbage, blood in the dirt, dark and spreading. Ben closed his eyes, opened them. The hand was still there, fingers curled, gold band catching sunlight. He thinks of his mother's kitchen, the smell of bread. Focus on that, not this. Someone whispered in English behind him. Start walking. Don't stop. Whatever happens, don't stop walking. The column lurched forward. Ben's legs moved. They had to. The alternative was lying in the dirt with McCarthy. Ben doesn't know it yet, but he'll walk for 10 more days. And what he sees will be worse than McCarthy's severed hand. The march began at kilometer marker 0, 65 miles from Mariveles to San Fernando, through the tropics, through April heat, where the temperature climbed past 100 degrees before noon. Ben walked in a column 4 men wide. The Japanese assigned 1 guard for every 100 prisoners. The math was simple. They couldn't control this many men, so they used fear instead. Fear worked better than bullets. Every 100 yards, a body, sometimes American, sometimes Filipino, sometimes still alive, just watching the column pass with eyes that didn't beg anymore, eyes that had moved beyond begging into something else, acceptance maybe, or nothing at all. The rule became clear without being spoken. You fall, you die. You help someone who falls, you both die. You ask for water, you die. The rule was simple. Keep walking or stop breathing. Tech Sergeant Lester Tenney walked 3 rows ahead of Ben, 192nd Tank Battalion. Lester would survive the march, survive the prison camps, survive 3.5 years of slavery, die in 2017 at age 96. But right now, in April 1942, he was watching his best friend collapse. The friend's name was Eddie, from Chicago, 22 years old, dark hair and a laugh that could fill a barracks. Eddie had talked about opening a restaurant after the war, Italian food, his grandmother's recipes. Eddie's legs fold. He goes down face first into the dirt road. Lester bends to help him up. Instinct. You help your buddy. That's the rule they learned in training. A Japanese guard materialized beside them. Young, maybe 19. He was shaking. This was probably his first combat posting. First time holding a rifle with a bayonet attached. Eddie looks up at him, opens his mouth to speak. The bayonet goes through his spine. Lester jerks back, keeps walking. His hands are still reaching for Eddie, but his legs are walking. Some part of his brain understands the new rule. Grief is a luxury. Grief will get you killed. Lester's face goes blank. Empty. Ben recognizes that look. He'll see it on every survivor. The look of a man who's learned the only rule that matters. Behind them, the guard wipes his bayonet on Eddie's uniform, returns to his position in the line. The column never stops moving. Ben watched it happen. Eddie's laugh echoes in his head, won't stop echoing. Ben wants it to stop. That night, they were allowed to stop. Ben sat with his back against a rice paddy. He made a promise to himself in Montana. Survive this. Tell them what happened. The promise feels hollow now. Around him, men whispered names, addresses, last wishes. Day 4, kilometer marker 48. Ben's tongue sticks to the roof of his mouth, feels like leather, tastes like copper and rot. When he tries to swallow, nothing happens. His throat has forgotten how. He hasn't had water in 36 hours. The dysentery means he's losing more fluid than he'd ever taken in. Dysentery smells like death's waiting room. Everyone has it. The whole column reeks of it. He's a walking corpse. A dead man postponing the paperwork. The cruelty wasn't random. It was architectural, designed with purpose. They passed artesian wells every few kilometers, clear, cool water bubbling up from the ground, natural springs that had been there for centuries. Water trickling into the well. The sound is torture. The guards stopped to drink, filled their canteens, lit cigarettes, laughed at jokes Ben couldn't understand. The prisoners weren't allowed to stop. Ben could see the water, 20 feet away. So close he could hear it. His body screamed for it, every cell begging. His cracked lips split when he tries to speak. Fresh blood on old blood. He tastes salt, sweat dripping into his mouth. A Filipino soldier broke formation, just ran for the well. He was maybe 5 feet away when the machine gun opened up. The burst was short, professional. The body hit the water with a splash. The water turned red, spread out in lazy circles. The column walked past. Some men tried to cup the bloody water anyway, reached out with shaking hands. The guards beat them back with rifle butts. Private William Dias walked near Ben, Army Air Corps pilot. Sharp eyes, always watching, always recording. Dias would escape in 1943, bring the first eyewitness accounts of the Death March to America, die testing a new aircraft before the war ended. But today, he was memorizing, counting, recording everything in his head. 17 wells, Dias muttered. 17 wells in 3 days. They stop at every one. We can't touch it. Ben understood then. This wasn't a march. It was a filter. They were walking the prisoners to death. separating the ones strong enough for slave labor from the ones who would die anyway. It was efficient. It was monstrous. It was both things at once. The heat presses on his chest like a hand, heavy, suffocating. The sun beat down, no shade, no clouds, just white heat that seemed to come from everywhere. The air tastes yellow, hot, wrong. The letter in his pocket is soaked through with sweat. The ink is running, his mother's address bleeding into illegible smears. That night they stopped at dark. Ben sat with his back against a rice paddy dike. Around him, men whispered, making deals with God, making deals with each other. Tomorrow, Ben will understand why some men pray for death, why the sun is worse than any bayonet. Scene 4. Sun Treatment. Day 6, Highway 7. The worst punishment wasn't a bayonet. It was the sun. When men collapsed but didn't die immediately, the guards left them in the road. Face up. No shade. No water. The equatorial sun did the work for them. It took hours, sometimes a full day, but it always worked. Ben passed a man he recognized, Sergeant Paul Kircham, 31st Infantry Regiment. Kircham was lying in the road with his eyes open, watching the column pass. He'd been there since morning. His skin was already blistering, turning red, then white, then something worse. His lips were black, cracked open like dried leather. But he was conscious, still aware, still watching. Ben forced himself not to look, kept his eyes forward. Kircham would survive this somehow, survive 3.5 years as a POW, return home, live to 102. But Ben didn't know that. Nobody knew that. Right now, Kircham was just another man being cooked alive on the road. They passed him again an hour later. He was still alive, still conscious. His eyes tracked the column, mouth moving, but no sound coming out. The sun had stolen his voice first. Paul Kircham is still alive on that road, still watching, and Ben realizes something worse than death. Consciousness doesn't end when suffering should. The Japanese called it tenkibo, sun punishment. It satisfied something in them. They hadn't wasted a bullet, hadn't dulled a bayonet, hadn't expended any energy. The sun did it for free. Nature as executioner. That was the deepest horror. Ben thought through his delirium. Not the cruelty itself, the efficiency of it, the industrialization of murder. They'd turned killing into a system, a process, something reproducible and scalable. A man next to Ben started laughing, high and thin. The sound didn't match his face. His face was slack, empty, but the laughter kept coming. The guards didn't stop him, didn't even look at him. They'd seen it before, the mind breaking before the body. The laughing man walked for another hour. Then he sat down in the middle of the road. Just sat, crossed his legs like he was waiting for a bus. The column flowed around him. The guards let him sit. He'd be dead by evening anyway. Ben's skin burns from inside. The fever or the sun. Can't tell which. His own mind was starting to slip. He saw things that weren't there. Water mirages on the road. His mother standing in the tree line. Eddie from Chicago walking beside him, talking about his grandmother's cooking. But Eddie was 3 days dead on kilometer marker 12. The heat turned everything into a dream. A bad dream you couldn't wake up from. Day 8. San Fernando train station. The survivors, maybe 54,000 left, were packed into boxcars. Steel boxes meant for 30 men. They loaded 100 per car. Ben was pushed into the darkness. Bodies pressed against him from all sides. Shoulder to shoulder, chest to back. No room to sit. No room to fall. The doors slammed shut. No windows, no air. The temperature inside climbed instantly. 120 degrees, 130. Higher. The metal walls turned into ovens. The air turns to soup. Hot, wet, suffocating. Ben breathes in, gets nothing. Tries again, still nothing. His lungs are working but drowning. The boxcar reeks of piss and panic. Men started screaming, clawing at the walls, trying to reach the door, anything. The train didn't move for 3 hours. Ben stood pressed between two other men. He didn't know their names, couldn't see their faces in the darkness, could only feel them, feel their heartbeats, feel their panic. One of them was praying in Tagalog. The other wasn't making any sound at all. The smell was immediate. Urine, feces, vomit. Fear has a smell too. Sharp and metallic, like copper mixed with sweat. Blood from his split lips. Copper mixing with dirt. When the train finally lurched forward, Ben was standing on top of someone. He thought the man was dead. Couldn't check, couldn't move. There was no room, no space to bend down, no way to see. Private Irvin Scott, a Marine, would describe this moment in 1993, in an interview 50 years later. We were packed so tight that when men died, they stayed standing. We carried corpses for 45 miles. The train swayed. Bodies swayed with it. A single organism now, moving as one. Ben felt the man beneath his feet. Felt him not breathing. Felt the wrongness of it. But his legs wouldn't move. Couldn't move. The crowd held him in place. The darkness was complete, total. Ben couldn't see his own hand in front of his face. Could only feel the heat, feel the bodies, feel his own lungs working harder for air that wasn't there. The letter is paste now, glued to his chest by sweat and time. His mother's name reduced to pulp. Some men went mad, started screaming and didn't stop, started hitting the walls, hitting other men. The violence spread in waves, invisible in the darkness. Ben closed his eyes, realized it didn't matter. The darkness was the same either way. The train ride took 3 hours. It felt like 3 days, like 3 years, like forever. When the doors open, Ben stumbles into sunlight and realizes the boxcar was just preparation. Camp O'Donnell is waiting. Camp O'Donnell, the Filipinos called it Campo ng Kamatayan. Camp Death, the name fit. Built for 10,000 men, now holding 60,000. The math didn't work. The math was never supposed to work. The Japanese commandant stood before them, spoke through an interpreter. His voice was flat, matter of fact. You are guests of the Emperor. We will work you to death. It wasn't a threat. It was the schedule, the plan, the stated objective. 400 men died per day. Dysentery, malaria, starvation, infections that turned simple cuts into death sentences. 400 men per day, every day, for months. Ben does the math in his head. Wishes he hadn't. The water came from contaminated wells, brown and thick. The food was lugao, rice gruel with fish heads and weevils. You ate, you got sick. You didn't eat, you starved. Either way, you died. Camp O'Donnell, rotting fish mixed with human decay. The smell never left. It got into your clothes, your hair, your skin. Ben spent the first week carrying bodies. There were so many that they dug continuous graves. Trenches, really. 3 feet deep. Not deep enough, but there wasn't time for deeper. The bodies went in shoulder to shoulder. Face up. Face down. It didn't matter. When the trench filled, they started another. At night, lying on the bare ground, Ben could taste it. Death has a taste. Sweet and rotten, like fruit gone bad. Men died in their sleep, died standing in line for food, died sitting against the barracks walls. Some mornings, Ben woke up next to a corpse, someone who'd been alive when he fell asleep, gone when the sun came up. No drama, no final words, just gone. By July 1942, 26,000 Filipinos were dead, 1,500 Americans. The numbers kept climbing, the graves kept filling, the camp kept running like a machine designed for one purpose. But some men survived. Ben Steele survived. Lester Tenney survived. William Dias survived and escaped. Their testimonies reached America in January 1944. Life magazine published the accounts, photographs, drawings, witness statements. The nation learned what happened. The Bataan Death March became a rallying cry. Remember Bataan. Avenge Bataan. The words appeared on recruiting posters, in newsreels, in speeches. General Masaharu Homma, commander of the Japanese 14th Army, was executed by firing squad on April 3, 1946, 4 years to the day after he ordered the assault that led to the surrender. He claimed ignorance, said he didn't know about the march until months later, said his subordinates acted without orders. Maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. Either way, 10,000 men were dead. Either way, the horror happened. Either way, someone had to answer for it. But many guards simply went home after the war, disappeared into civilian life. No trials, no punishment, no justice. Ben Steele returned home in 1945, weighing 98 pounds. His mother didn't recognize him at first, thought he was someone else, a stranger wearing her son's face. He never sent that letter, the one in his pocket. He'd carried it for 3.5 years, through the Death March, through Camp O'Donnell, through the hell ships to Japan, through the slave labor camps. When he was finally freed, he burned it, watched it curl and blacken in the fire, the ink already unreadable. His mother's address already gone. Some promises were too painful to keep. He became an artist, spent the rest of his life drawing what he saw. Pen and ink sketches of walking corpses, bayonets, the sun, men dying in the road. He said he drew them to get them out of his head, to exorcise the ghosts. It didn't work. The march never ended for the survivors. They walked it every night in their dreams, every night for the rest of their lives. The shuffle of boots, the smell of death, the heat that never stopped. Lester Tenney testified at the war crimes trials, described Eddie falling, described the bayonet, described everything he'd seen. His voice never shook. He delivered the facts like a report, like military intelligence. But his hands shook the entire time. The horror of Bataan wasn't just what happened, it was what it revealed. How quickly humanity evaporates, how little it takes. Heat, thirst, exhaustion, fear. These things reduce us to survival machines, strip away everything we think makes us civilized. How the living can become the dead long before their hearts stop beating. Today, the Bataan Death March Memorial stands in Kapas, Tarlac. Along the original route, white markers every 100 meters, each one a reminder, each one a gravestone for men who have no graves. The survivors are almost all gone now. The last confirmed American survivor passed away in 2020. Ben Steele died in 2016. Lester Tenney in 2017. The voices are fading. Soon they'll all be silent. But their testimony remains. Documented, verified, real, written in military reports, recorded in interviews, drawn in ink, spoken at trials. This wasn't a ghost story. This was history. And history is the most terrifying horror of all. Because it happened. Because it was real. Because ordinary men did these things to other ordinary men. Because it could happen again. If the War Maestro's account of Bataan left its mark on you, stand with us. Count your steps carefully and subscribe to ensure more buried testimonies reach the light. Ring that bell. The archive opens irregularly, and you won't want to miss the next classified file. Share this with fellow historians of the dark and the documented, those who know that real horror needs no supernatural element. Remember, the march ended in 1942, but some prisoners never stopped walking.